Ladies and gentlemen, I think something is happening.
I came here to give you these facts.
All right, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about fake news. We've heard the term a lot, fake news. Where does it come from? Why do people think that there's fake news? Has there ever been fake news going on before? Yes, 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 and yes are the answer to all of those questions. Fake news continues to happen. All you have to do, if you want to check for yourself about fake news, go onto YouTube today, type in fake news, or better yet, type in CNN fake news stories, and just do a search on that. And then do a search for MSNBC fake news stories. You can even search Fox. They all have fake news stories. And you will see videos of actual segments that they had done where you can tell that the news is being faked, and then it's broken down on how it's faked. I mean, it's pretty incredible, from green screens that they use to fake stories, to actors that they use, crisis actors, to manufactured events, to real life events, and then they switch the stories around, sort of like what's going on with Mike Brown and then this filmmaker, the filmmaker who went and twisted the story so he could sell his documentary, that kind of stuff. It happens all the time. I've been in Hollywood for a number of years, and I can't tell you how many people I've run into that are willing to stretch the truth and don't care what happens if they stretch the truth, because it might make them a couple extra bucks. And it's sad that we've become a society that is willing to take money in order to distort the truth, but that's where we are. And we have lots of people in the media that are involved in this, and it happens every single day. People that you might not even realize in the media that are lying to you have been lying to you. So what I brought up was a very important case in this regard. It's called Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird was allegedly a large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as the CIA, that, beginning in the early 1950s, attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes and funded student and cultural organizations and magazines as front organizations. According to writer Deborah Davis, Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into propaganda network and oversaw operations of front groups. CIA support of front groups was exposed after a 1967 Ramparts magazine article revealed that the National Student Association received funding from the CIA. Congressional investigations reports in the 70s also revealed agency connections with journalists and civic groups. None of these reports, however, mentions an Operation Mockingbird controlling or supporting these activities. A Project Mockingbird is mentioned in the CIA Family Jewels report compiled in the mid-70s. According to the declassification version of the report released in 2007, Project Mockingbird involved wiretapping of two American journalists for several months in the early 60s. So what we have here is we have a media program, Operation Mockingbird. What was the last thing they were involved with? Wiretapping. What's the big story we're hearing about going on? Wiretapping. Who's an organization that's involved trying to dispute or throw their opinion in this regard? The CIA. It's all connected, my friends. All the same dirty players that are involved with this. All right, this next story here, U.S. government just legalized Operation Mockingbird. FBI can now impersonate the media. FBI agents conducted undercover investigations have now been given the green light to impersonate journalists, the Justice Department determined last week, effectively legalizing the government's most notorious propaganda program, Operation Mockingbird. Last Thursday, the Department of Justice of Inspector General published what's become the subject of outrage for journalists, civil and constitutional rights advocates, and legal experts. A review of the FBI's impersonation of a journalist is a criminal investigation. Okay, and this story itself, if we look at the date, goes back to 2016, and this is a program that went on years before. As I read in this first part, goes all the way back to the early 50s. Okay, here's another important story here. This comes from Carl Bernstein. After leaving the Washington Post in 1977, Carl Bernstein spent 6 months looking at the relationship of the CIA and the press during the Cold War years. His 25,000-word cover story published in the Rolling Stone on October 20th, 1977 is reprinted below. It says how America's most powerful news media worked hand in glove with the Central Intelligence Agency and why the Church Committee covered it up. Carl Bernstein. In 1953, Joseph Alsop, one of America's leading syndicated columnists, went to the Philippines to cover an election. He did not go because he was asked to do so by a syndicate. He did not go because he was asked to do so by the newspapers that printed his column. He went at the request of the CIA. Alsop is also one of more than 400 American journalists who in the past 25 years have secretly carried out assignments for the Central Intelligence Agency, according to documents on file at the CIA headquarters. Some of these journalists' relationships with the agency were tacit. Some were explicit. There was cooperation, accommodation, and overlap. Journalists provided a full range of clandestine services from simple intelligence gathering to serving as go-betweens with spies in communist countries. Reporters shared their notebooks with the CIA. Editors shared their staffs. Some of the journalists were Pulitzer Prize winners, distinguished reporters who considered themselves ambassadors without portfolio for their country. Most were less exalted. Foreign correspondents who found out their association with the agency helped their work. Stringers and freelancers who were as interested in the do of the spy business as in the filing articles, and the smallest category, full-time CIA journalists were engaged to perform tasks for the CIA and the consent of the managements of the Americans' leading news organizations. The history of the CIA's involvement with the American press continues to be shrouded by an official policy of obfuscation and deception for the following principal reasons. One, the use of journalists has been among the most productive means of intelligence gathering employed by the CIA, although the agency has cut back sharply on the issue of use of reporters since '73, primarily as a result of the pressure from the media. Some journalist operatives are still posted abroad. Also, further investigation into the matter, CIA officials say, would probably inevitably reveal a series of embarrassing relationships in the 50s and 60s with some of the most powerful organizations and individuals in American journalism. Among some of the executives who lent their cooperation to the agency were William Pauly of the Columbia Broadcasting System, Henry Luce of Time Inc., Arthur Hayes Sulzberger of the New York Times, Barry Brigham Sr. of the Louisville Courier-Journal, and James Copley of the Copley News Service. Other organizations which cooperated with the CIA include the American Broadcasting Company, the National Broadcasting Company, the Associated Press, the United Press International, Reuters, Hearst newspapers, Scripps, Howard, Newsweek magazine, and the Mutual Broadcasting System, the Miami Herald, and the Old Saturday Evening Post and the New York Herald. By far the most valuable of the associations, according to the CIA, has been with the New York Times, CBS, and Time Incorporated. And one last piece here. It's another one, CIA's propaganda network. CIA and the press, when the Washington Post ran the CIA's propaganda network. Last week, the Washington Post published a scurrilous piece by a heretofore obscure technology reporter named Craig Timberg, alleging that the faintest evidence that Russian intelligence was using more than 200 independent news sites to pump out pro-Putin and anti-Clinton propaganda during the election campaign. Under the Press's headline, Russian propaganda effort helped spread fake news during election, experts say. Timberg concocted the story based on allegations from a previous group called Propornut, run by nameless individuals of unknown origin. All right, so you could see there's more to this article here. But you've got 4 good articles now there to continue to do your research on today. Okay? Fake news is a real thing. Fake news is when somebody tells a story and they lie about it. The media asks, like, well, what is this fake news about? The fake news is you're making stuff up. Okay? You're making stuff up, and when you make stuff up, people get dumber. There was actually a study that was done several years back on what people knew about what was going on in the world based on their news that they watched. And it was determined that those who watched mainstream news sources knew less about what was going on in the world than those who didn't even read news at all. How could that be? It's because those who were watching the mainstream were watching made-up stories. So before they could even get to the truth, you have to unravel the lies that you've been told by them. So that's the problem we're facing. But if we're more aware of it, we'll understand that this is a real serious allegation, and we all need to be on guard against this and to make sure that it isn't happening. All right, and we are the gatekeepers. We're the only ones who can make that stop by paying attention. And there you go. Our meditation is up next.